Hello, my name is Robin Woods. I'm from England. I live in Mexico. Been living here for 4 years, and I've been a trader for over 20 years. During part of that 20 years, I was working, but back in 2017, so nearly 6 years ago, I stopped working full time. I used to work in different investment banks, and basically became a full-time trader. Now, I say full-time trader, but the reality is that the way I trade is not really best described as full-time. I usually only spend about an hour a day between Monday and Friday. So what is this about? Well, it's actually to give you a little bit of an introduction to me, Robin Woods, what my experience is with trading, some of my specific experiences, which I think can be quite interesting, and also to present to you my course. The idea of the course is very simple. Over the years, I took a lot of courses myself, and one of the most frustrating things I found about those courses was that once you bought the course, you really had no support. And one thing I do with this course is I provide everybody with a personal one-to-one if you buy the 3-month course, which is 347 US dollars. So as you can see on this page, I've included something which I think is probably the most important thing to understand about trading, which is logical when you think about it, but most people unfortunately forget this, and I include myself in my early days, which is that the key really is to go slowly. This is not a race. If you go on to places like Twitter and maybe on YouTube, you will get lots of people telling you about how they became a successful trader in a very short time, how much money they're making, their car and so forth. That's great. I don't have any problems with that. But what I do get concerned about, and this is my own personal experience, is that there is this, unfortunately, I think, kind of an assumption that this is something that you will understand very quickly. You may do, but it doesn't mean you'll be successful immediately. And in today's presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about that topic. Just a couple of other things on this page. I'm actually a funded trader, which means that I have passed various challenges. And currently, I have about 350,000 US dollars of funding. My goal by the end of next year is to raise that to 1 million. And the beautiful thing about trading is that when I say I only work 1 hour a day, it will still be 1 hour a day, regardless of whether I'm trading with $350,000 or $1 million. So I think this represents a fantastic opportunity. There is also a free book. You can buy it in Amazon, but I've also given free copies on my Linktree address, which you can find at the end of this presentation, which gives you a much more in-depth story about how I became a trader. So let's move into the slideshow part here, because I think it will just be useful to get an impression of who I am and what my experience was, and make it a little bit more personal. In this picture, this was in 2015, so 8 years ago now, nearly. And my kids were obviously a lot younger then. My eldest, who is Richard, who you can see over here, he towers above me now. Michael, he is pretty much here, and he's getting much bigger all the time. So it's amazing how time flies. And I think one of the things I learned with trading is that when I was working full time, I spent so little time with my kids. It's one of my lasting regrets that now that I do have the time, I try to spend as much time as possible with them. And I think that's, to me, is the greatest gift that trading can give you. So that was 2015 in Singapore. We had been living there for about 8 years. Both my children were born there. I was working for a Swiss investment bank and having a pretty good life, except I wasn't really happy because my true passion was always trading. Now, shortly after that earlier picture was taken, I got some news that my boss was moving on. And I was certain in my head that I was going to get his job. It didn't happen. And I decided that maybe it was time to look somewhere else for my career. And I stayed working in my field within human resources and found an opportunity to move to Hong Kong. Um, I should really, this is a almost hilarious example of the shoemaker's children don't wear shoes or dentists have bad teeth or something like that, in the sense that I had personally moved a lot of people from Singapore to Hong Kong in my career in HR, but I had forgotten that a lot of them said having children in Hong Kong was a lot more difficult. I know a lot of people in Hong Kong will definitely disagree with me, but I think if you're comparing the realities of Singapore to Hong Kong, I think actually it is easier in Singapore, having lived through both of them. So in this picture, it was a much smaller apartment. A lot of apartments in Hong Kong are tiny. This picture on the right was, I think, my first day at work, ready to go to work, and my kids were going to start their day. Richard was starting a new school. Michael hadn't found a school, and in fact, he never went to school in Hong Kong because we only stayed there for 6 months. So Hong Kong on the surface was looked fantastic. It looks like an ultra modern city. I think it has probably the best food in the world, and I've been to a lot of places, and I can say that that means something when I say that they have the best food. But it just didn't work for my family, and I'm glad that we had the experience. But what it started making me think about was, well, if it's not working here for my family and we have to move on, is there some way I could get my trading to a level where it would pay all of the bills, right? So I thought that would be fantastic. So actually moving to Hong Kong was the genesis of all of my, where I am now, basically, nearly seven years later. So there came the time where after 6 months, unfortunately, it just wasn't working for my family. And it was a very, very difficult decision because I had never in my life left a job without a job to go to. And it was something I just had to do, unfortunately, in Hong Kong. I took this picture after I'd actually resigned. And, as a family, we were thinking, wow, this is really happening. And we had this great idea that what we were going to do was, I'd been doing great with my trading as well, but we were going to spend 6 months traveling the world and basically trying to find somewhere to live. My wife is from Mexico, I'm from England. So both of those countries were possibilities, but we also wanted to look at some other ones as well. So we started a 6-month journey, which was basically one country, 1 month, Airbnb, not hotels. We wanted to try and, as much as we could, make the experience as similar to living in the country. I say all of this because the plan was for me to trade the entire time. And I'm thinking, wow, if this works, the sky is the limit, right? If I can trade from anywhere in the world, because all you need is internet, then this is going to be fantastic. So, as I say, we decided that we were going to leave. The first stop we decided was Bangkok, Thailand. And my wife and I had been there actually before, and I'd always loved it. I've loved Thai food. I think the culture is amazing. Bangkok is a fantastic city. So I just remember we got on that plane, and it was like we didn't have a care in the world. We were just so happy to be moving on and starting another chapter in our lives. So that was a day we went to one of the big aquariums in Bangkok. At this point, I started trading. Now, because I was in Asia and I trade the US markets, I was trading in the evening. That was one of the disadvantages of Asia, that some people might want to do things socially in the evening. I couldn't really, because that was when I was trading. Next stop, we went to Malaysia. We got this amazing apartment, had this fantastic view, as you can see. It was right in the middle of the city center. My dad was living in Malaysia at the time. And yeah, I thought it was great. It was like a cheap version of Singapore. It wasn't exactly the same. But as a family, we were, really enjoying our time there. And yeah, I was really starting to enjoy this and thinking, this is great. The trading from home experience and not working. And well, I never considered trading working because I enjoy it so much. But obviously the long-term plan was to find somewhere to live full time, but we were really enjoying it, just traveling around. The picture in the middle, I have to point out because we were there at Starbucks, and it's something my wife always makes fun of me. People who know me know that I love Starbucks. Now, it's not necessarily that I love coffee in Starbucks. I just like the atmosphere. I can't explain it. If you like it, you know. If you don't like it, you'll never agree with me. But I love going there. We had to spend more time in Starbucks in Malaysia than we really wanted to, though, because I had a bit of a problem with the internet at the place we stayed, and that was one of the first realities, shall we say, that we faced traveling, which was actually, you really need to be sure about something like that, because slow internet, I think, is probably the greatest test of patience the world has ever created. So we're having a great life. We were trying to manage the homeschooling things with our kids as well. And this is where it was already starting to get a little bit tricky, because you realize that it's a lot of work doing that. So, we were thinking, well, it's 6 months. Let's see how it goes. It's not a long time. We're trying to find somewhere to stay more permanently afterwards. Next stop was Bali, Indonesia. And, Bali has this amazing reputation. I grew up in Singapore, and I always used to hear people going on vacation there. And I thought, wow, this would be a great place to go to. Bali definitely had a more relaxed vibe, although the traffic is one of the most chaotic I have ever seen in the world. And people just drive everywhere on the sidewalk or pavement, depending where you're from. And we were actually living on the eastern side of the island, which was unfortunately a little bit remote for my liking, but we used to come in every couple of days into the more central part called Seminyak, and we went to this beach club, which, as you can see, was just amazing. So by the end of the month, we were coming to the end of our time in Bali. I started to find a little bit of a hiccup, a bit of a problem with trading. The reason being is that, again, we were in a situation where the internet was not great. That was one of my biggest learnings. And I realized that I can't mess around. I need to trade. And it was, in a way, it was stressing me out, because I really wanted to trade. And my wife's telling me, just enjoy yourself, enjoy yourself. And I always realized that I enjoy myself trading. Yeah, it's only an hour or so, but I really, really enjoy it. It's a process which not everybody will feel the same about. I know a lot of people come to trading because they just want to make money, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But you are going to find inevitably that you need to maintain some interest in it, because otherwise it's just another job. And I think that, basically with all the benefits trading has to offer, you can enjoy it. So we left Bali, and our next stop was going to Europe, going to England. So my kids, as I say, were born in Singapore. They'd never lived in England. I thought this is a great opportunity to take them there. We're going to spend a month in our old home, which we had rented out for many years and when we were in Singapore. Picture on the right, you can see it was a small flat, 2-bedroom on the first floor. For people in the United States, elsewhere, that's the second floor. So in England, they call it the first floor. You can see there's a beautiful rainbow. It looks so auspicious. We'd arrived in the English summer, which I'll be honest is the best time to arrive. Trading was going great. I had this time I could control the internet a lot more. I basically got a short contract because it was my home, so I was able to get a short contract and resolve that problem. Also, I found that the timing was working better because in Europe, US Open is like in the afternoon, so you don't have to get up too early. You can still go out in the evenings. So it was basically perfect. Now, we were coming to the end of our time in England, but we took the opportunity to make sure family met with my other family there. And we're starting to think, this period is coming to an end, and we need to really find a home to live. I was still 100% sure that, trading was going to be the thing to do. But I was already starting to feel, although my wife loves lots of changes and things like that, for me personally, I like to have the home comforts. I like to have stability in my life, and I was thinking, you know, I really kind of want to find where we're going to stay long term. So we left England. This time we flew to Mexico, and in Mexico, the place we flew to was Playa del Carmen. Well, we flew to Cancun and then drove to Playa del Carmen. And of course, my wife's family was there as well. We had a great time in Playa del Carmen. We had arrived in August. It was probably one of the hottest places I've ever lived in. Now, I have lived in places that are technically as hot, but I found that there was almost no escape from the heat. You know, you could go to air conditioning, but there were surprisingly few places that I found in Playa del Carmen with air conditioning. Maybe that has changed. But after a fairly short period there, we actually moved. We left Playa del Carmen. I mean, we had a great time in a hotel there. It was all inclusive. I was still trading at that time, and we thought, okay, what's next? Because Mexico looked like a really great option for us. It wasn't actually the final location, which you'd be interested to know. But we decided it would be somewhere to keep in the back pocket, maybe to come back to. But Playa del Carmen was, as I say, it was just too hot for me personally. So after a period of time in Torreon, Coahuila, where my wife's family are from, I was starting to think, you know what, trading for a living is one thing, but I actually felt like I didn't have anything to do because I just didn't fill my time. And, you know, that was one of the lessons for me, that I really needed to fill my time. So I actually got a job again. I went back to London, worked for another big bank. Our kids went into the local school, so I never regret that because I think they had a great experience in the local school. I got to see all my friends from university, and yeah, basically things were great. You know, we'd go out for dinners more and so forth. And I thought, well, this is better because this is more like a more sort of permanent existence, right? As a family. And you know, Mexico is definitely an option in the long term, but I just wasn't doing enough work to fill my day, and I was getting bored and a little bit depressed, really. Even though, you know, there were so many things to do in Mexico, I'd worked for so many years that not having activities to do was actually a negative impact for me. So we had this great existence here. You can see this more sort of panoramic view of Bedford. There's this beautiful river that goes through. Our flat was sort of over this way, and you could see the river. So on paper, it looked absolutely brilliant. Now, what was happening at this time was I was still trading. I mentioned that I could trade in my lunch break in England, and I was doing so well, okay, that I thought about it and I said, you know, I don't need a job. I can find something to do. Okay, so after only about a year of actually working for that company, I quit, and we were still living in Bedford. I was trying to sort of fill my day, going to the gym, going on walks and things like that. Bedford's a nice place to live, but one thing I had forgotten is I was not used to the English winters, and I'd lived in Asia so long. My last experience in England had been in July, just for the month of July, which was great weather. And as the weather got worse and worse, I thought, oh my God, I've made a mistake again. This is not the best place to land. I know a lot of people like cold weather, so that's a personal preference, but it's just not for me. So after a couple of years, we wanted the children to be more comfortable in England before we decided to move on. And so we waited until my oldest son, you can see in the middle with the white suit, had his first communion. My youngest son, he actually did his first communion as well. And we thought once that had been done, that might be a logical point to move on. And we were thinking again of Mexico, maybe not Playa del Carmen this time, but you know, maybe somewhere else to go to. So as I say, shortly after that sort of, I quit my job after 1 year. After a further 2 years, we decided, look, let's look at our options. And Mexico was kind of number one for us. So in July 2019, we finally made the decision to move. It was a bittersweet decision because obviously our children were very happy in the schools, and it's always, as a parent, it's difficult to make that decision. But we wanted to think long term. I knew that trading was my goal. I knew that I needed to fill my time, but I also knew that my family could be really happy here in Mexico. So we made our way to the airport, got on the Air Mexico flight, and flew to Mexico City first, and then came and for 6 months stayed with my parents-in-law who live in Torreon. So they enrolled in the local American school because they didn't really have very much Spanish at that time, and we wanted to make the transition as easy as possible. Obviously, once kids get happy in the school, you basically have run out of roads. That is the end of your moving around a lot. Otherwise, they'll hate you. So with that, I just want to bring you to the end of my presentation and say that, in summary, I have been able to experience some of the most amazing times of my life trading. One of my realizations as a trader was that I need to occupy my time. I don't want to start trading more because that was the whole point. It was to free up time. But it gave me the opportunity to do another one of my passions, which is not something that pays the bills, but is something which means a lot to me, which is teaching. And nowadays I teach English in the evenings. So I trade in the morning because it's the New York time, Mexico time. Middle of the day, I'm free, do chores, go for a coffee with my wife, have lunch. In the evening, go and do a couple of hours of teaching English. So I'm so happy that this is basically the way I live now. And, I'm so glad we moved when we did, because we moved before COVID happened. And I think, Mexico was a great place to be relatively during COVID. So the reason I'm here now is because I have a passion for teaching. I always have. It was my very first job out of university. I went back to England and worked as an accountant for many years. But in the back of my head, I always knew I liked teaching. Teaching English is great. I really enjoy it. I really like to see people develop. But I really now, in this chapter of my life, want to help people to learn how to trade. For me, it has meant so much in my life that I think this is probably the greatest gift I can give to other people. Yes, it's not free, but what I want to do with this course, and to make it very different to others, is to make sure that people have the opportunity to give it their best chance. I strongly believe that most people never really give trading courses a chance. And that's not their fault. It's because they are just left to their own devices in most cases. I don't intend to do that. And if you get on the 3-month course, we will have a one-to-one through Zoom when you finish the course, so we can go through any questions you've got. But throughout that period, you can send me as many WhatsApp messages as you want, and I will answer them all. For me, it's a very special thing to be able to teach people. And I think this is one of the greatest skills you can learn, because regardless of what you do in your job, in your life generally, this is always a useful skill to have. So with that, I hope my little story was interesting. I really recommend this course to you. The QR code there will send you to my link tree with how you can start the course and how to get in touch with me. And, if you just want to have a consultation, there's no obligation, it's completely free. And we can talk about how I can help you. Excellent. Okay, well, thank you very much. I hope that was interesting for you. And I look forward to speaking to you very soon. Thank you.